There we go. I figured if I'm going to watch this, I'll go ahead and watch it here on this channel.
And perhaps the most consequential general election debate we have ever seen, because
Now, keep in mind, I don't trust politicians.
So with
the
stakes
but,
so high, the presidential debate just moments away. We have the entire news division keeping
the
an eye
one
on
that they want to
everything.
eliminate at all costs.
Fact-checking on our live blog.
That's my
It's all
interest for
gonna be
sure.
happening right here, the debate now, just 10 seconds
The
away,
debate.
and we will be back with our post-game show as soon as it's over. We are going to toss
Post-game
right
show.
now to David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Tonight, the high-stakes showdown here in Philadelphia.
High-stakes showdown.
President Kamala Harris.
Predictions. I don't really do politics much on this channel. I don't really care about politicians. I say, stop taking my money, man. The reason why I don't like politics is because there's a lot of talking. Nothing really gets done. Nothing gets resolved. Put that into words of action. Well, you don't last long. I don't have any opinions about that. Man, it sucks. I predict this.
Former President Donald Trump.
David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
That
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for
You know what?
ABC News President.
We're gonna see a cool and collected Trump here.
ABC and around the world tonight.
I think that's what
Vice
we're
President
going to
Kamala
see.
Harris
At least
and
I hope
President
so,
Donald
anyway.
Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaign.
Let's crank up the volume for
now
sure.
Less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with two.
By the way, is she
commercial
so? Is she
breaks.
the one
No
right now
topics or
running the
questions
show?
have been shared
Who's
with
running the show right now?
campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals,
Like,
and
if
1
there's
minute
like
for
a
follow-ups,
war,
clarifications,
well,
or
there's
responses.
there's
Their
a military
microphones will
action.
only be turned on
Who
when
is
it's their turn to speak.
signing off
no
on that?
pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for two candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage.
Alrighty.
Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
If Trump was smart, he'd be cool, calm, and collected. Because, like, she's going to try to get him on the, excuse me,
Kamala
I'm
Harris.
speaking.
Let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good
Okay.
evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here
she's gonna
tonight
freeze prices.
often asks
Because,
his
you know, that's to
supporters,
take care of
are
it,
you
right?
better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid.
Yes or no?
And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America.
Really?
I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build
Yes
what
or
I call
no?
an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing.
Opportunity
We know
economy.
that we have a shortage of homes and housing. And the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I
Trump
intend on
wants to say
extending
something.
a tax cut
Look at
for those families of $6,000, which is the largest
He
child
wants to
tax
say
credit that we
something.
have given in a long time.
But he
So
can't.
that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. I was actually, my mother raised my
That's your
sister and
passion?
me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan
Small
is to
business.
give a $50,000 tax deduction to startups, small businesses,
Okay.
knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump...
Never mind that there are billionaires that support her, too, that will definitely get some sort of benefit. So it's like, what are you talking about?
Sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago.
Hey, don't interrupt him.
This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora.
Is she really
going
to keep that smug
look? They are taking over the towns.
Whole thing?
They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate.
It was a lot better than what it was.
I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
He's trying to trigger a response.
What we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected to get.
Like, that's some crazy kooky stuff that the left cooked up.
That the American people
Project
want
2025.
a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic.
He's going to focus on the energy sector, I think.
Not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military.
Don't
They give
take
me
credit for that,
a
Vax.
lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
Boom.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you
He
look
just
at
spit
his
out a plan.
economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what
Okay.
I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year
Watch
would
Trump's
invite a
face
recession.
here. Urge
You
to
just
reply.
have to look
It's like rowing.
at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the
He's
Wharton
not
School
even
of Finance,
fazed.
and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make
Okay.
people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied
That's what
Biden's
she said about
plan,
you.
and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on
All
something.
right,
you
who
both
here has
brought
a plan?
up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You
Like I know what
responded, and let's
Trump's
drill down
going to
on
do
this,
already.
because
Like
your plan
kick out
is what she
the,
calls is essentially a
illegals,
national
which-
sales tax. Your proposal
Yeah,
calls
okay,
for
I'm
tariffs,
fine
as you
with
pointed
that.
out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them,
Because
they
if they
should have
checked
gone
at
out
the
and they should
prices,
have
some
immediately
people aren't
cut
gonna
the
buy that
tariffs.
stuff.
But those tariffs are there 3.5
But they could
years
try.
now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our
speaking truth
country
there.
are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade
Are you going to mention what it did for the energy? Huh? What they did there? No, you're not going to mention that.
wars. You want to talk about his deal with China. What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition
we
for the
sell
21st
weapons to our
century,
enemies all the time.
which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on
All right.
relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having, on the short end of the stick, in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did,
Workers'
let's
rights.
talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of
That's right.
philosophies like they have and policies like
We're
they have.
currently
I don't say her
still
because
building
she
a
has
chip
no
manufacturing
policy.
plant.
Everything that she believed 3 years ago and
That's
4
why I was
years
like, that
ago
doesn't make
is
any
out
sense.
the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist
went there.
professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country,
What's a rebuttal
and when you
to
look
that
at
gonna
these
be?
millions and millions of people that are
He's
pouring
gonna
into our
say, yeah.
country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's
Someone's
insane.
getting a kickback
Almost
from,
policy
like,
that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President
Crime
Trump.
families or something.
Lindsay.
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be
Might
great
be
for women and their reproductive
landmine for him.
rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, is doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our
that's the
country,
thing that Kamala's gonna
because
do.
he is really out of it. But her vice presidential
Make
pick
outrageous
says
faces.
abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born.
All right, well, she's going to do
okay.
this.
And that's not okay with me.
She's
Hence
gonna do
the
like
vote.
hand
But what I did is something
over the face.
for 52 years. They've been
That's gonna
trying to
come out
get
later on
Roe v.
tonight.
Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in
That's
it. Ronald
good. That's good
Reagan
for
did
Ben and
also.
Grace Thorpe. They're
85%
gonna need
of
that.
Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme
the
Court had
states
great
kind of, like,
courage
figure
in
it out.
doing it. And I
And
give
slowly they will.
tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended.
Man, her
And
dry
now,
mouth
in
is really
over
kicking in.
20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that
Trump
means.
abortion bans
A
made it
survivor
seem
of a
like he
crime of
made those
violation
bans
to
himself
their
when there was like
body
states
does
that
not
did
have
that.
the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare
Tom was
providers
really
are
trying
afraid
to
they
get
might
under his
go to
skin,
jail,
but it
and she's
doesn't really
bleeding
seem
out
to
in
be
a car
phasing
in the
him.
parking lot. She didn't
Like,
want
if this
that.
is all she
Her
has-
husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill
Close.
to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly
Don't give her that
sign
moment,
it
Trump. That's all you have
into
to do.
law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages.
What?
I think the
Trump-
American people
Trump
believe
America?
that certain freedoms,
pregnant woman's
in
gonna be
particular
monitored.
the freedom to make decisions
Don't
about
you even
one's own
think
body,
about it.
should not be made by
Can't
the
even
government.
be near a hangar.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well,
Please
there
be
she goes
dispatched.
again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban.
Trump
because
pussy squad
we've
will
gotten
come and be
what
dispatched.
Everybody wanted.
Checking that womb.
Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every
Trump
legal
pussy
scholar
squad.
wanted
That's
it
what
to
said
be
he had to
brought
grab him by
back
the
into the
pussy.
states, and the states
Gotta
are voting.
check.
And it may take a little time, but for
All right.
52 years, this issue
There's
has
no
torn
one in there.
our country
Time to
apart.
put one in there.
And they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think
Back on
probably her
topic.
boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his
Back.
time on the beach.
You're back
But
on
look,
track here.
her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to
He's
discuss
trying to
it
say
because
that he's not
she'd
gonna
never
need to
be
do
able to
that.
get it, just
That's
like she
not
couldn't get
likely
student
that's ever
loans. They
gonna
couldn't get
happen.
student loans. They didn't even come
States
close
are
to
gonna
getting
take care of
student
it.
loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what
But
she
he
says
can't
about
say
going
no
to Congress.
because
So
it's gonna
wonderful. Let's
upset
go
his
to
base.
Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government, and we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President
Like,
Harris, want to give
the
you
thing
your
about
time
Trump
to respond,
is
but I do
he's
want to
not
ask,
like
would you
the
support
hardcore
any
conservative that they
restrictions
try
on a
to
woman's
paint
right
him
to
to
an
be.
abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade.
He
And
doesn't care
as
one
you
way or the other.
rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs.
She's really trying to get a response.
What you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body.
She's doing it again.
And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF.
Okay.
And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question, would you veto?
You could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside, and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump.
I know what the soundbite is
talking
talking
about.
about.
To immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's
such a
important to
weird thing.
Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done
Gonna have to do
anything
prayer
different
time
from
with my
President
son
Biden
a
on
little
this?
bit.
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that
bill that
would have
allows
put
so many
1,500
people a
more
day
border
to come
agents
in.
on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened?
Then why did you
to that
lift
bill?
the thing that Trump had
Donald Trump got on the phone,
where like
called
it was like
up
locked
some
down
folks
everything?
in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration
very
a lot tonight,
Democrat of
even
him.
when it's not the
It's
subject that is
very
being
politician.
raised. And I'm going to actually do
Run on a
something
problem
really
instead of fixing a
unusual, and
problem.
I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about
What the hell is she
windmills
even
cause
talking about right
cancer.
now?
And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve
pivot.
a president who actually puts you first. And I pledge to you that I will.
Here.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
This
President
is
Trump,
like
on that
border
point, I want to
security.
get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there.
Does she even have
and
rallies?
then showing
He's
them
afraid
in
to
a
have
different
rallies.
light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening
Iran,
to
it's
the
happening,
towns
guys.
all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as
yeah, I mean, if you're just going to eat someone's pet, you can get out of here.
The reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again.
American great
She's destroying
again.
this country.
Again.
And if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant
I haven't had a chance
community.
to look into that. Does anyone know anything about that?
The people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
According to some people, Venezuela gangs are not taking over people's apartments. So
by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election,
I hear she drinks a
have
lot,
the endorsement
and it makes sense.
of 200
A drinker
Republicans
can spot a full
who
of
have
drinker. She
formerly
definitely
worked
drinks.
with President Bush,
Oh, yeah.
Mitt Romney, and John McCain.
By the way,
including the endorsement of
I don't have a drink in
former
my
Vice
hand.
President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who
Gentleman
the
Jack?
former president is, if he didn't make it clear already,
Or Psaki?
just ask people who have worked with him.
Where are we
His
going,
former
guys?
chief of staff,
Gentleman
a
Jack or
four-star
Psaki?
general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national
He sounds
security
drunk
advisor has said he
all
is
the
dangerous
time.
and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear
drinks
in
a
this
lot
election.
of semen.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you.
I mean, if
because
Kamala
when
said,
I
you
hear
know,
that-
I'll
See, I'm
give
a
everyone a
different kind of
blowjob,
person.
I'll be like,
I
well,
fired most of those people. Not so graciously.
I don't
They
need
did
that. I got a wife.
Bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you
That's
take a
what
guy
you're
like
supposed to do.
Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So
But
he
it was
writes a
pretty
book. Another one writes a book.
egregious.
Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the
I'm in
economy.
the clown show
look
of
at the
leaving,
inflation. They didn't fire
Iraq
any
and all
of
that
their
was pretty
economists.
nasty.
They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any
hey,
Republican
Alex
in
Jones,
history
she's black.
by
You
far.
got to respect the black.
In fact,
all right?
I got more votes than any president, sitting president.
Kamala Harris
in
is
history
100% black,
by
man.
far.
Right? I
Let
mean,
me
not a
continue on
man.
immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about
I mean, she
earlier.
likes
So let's
black
get back to
men.
your deportation proposal that the vice
mean, she
president
probably
has
has
reacted
black
to as
semen
well.
inside her,
President
dripping.
Trump, you call this the largest
now.
domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You
like-
say you would use the National Guard.
Kamala
You say
Harris
if things
looks like
get
she
out
has
of control,
pussy
you'd have,
liquor.
no problem
Like she's
using
so
the U.S.
drunk.
military.
Local police, yes.
You also
Her
said you would
pussy
use local
secretes
police.
like a liquor.
How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number
This
is
is the
much higher.
commentary that we're looking for.
Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country, and they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country.
Is she
And
getting a kickback?
This will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow.
Like,
and
oh,
I
the
think
pussy
they
look
probably
up.
did it because they think they're getting
They
their
just-
votes.
they all get a
But
chance
it's
to
not
lick
worth
her.
it, because they're destroying the
nasty,
fabric
man.
of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the
Yeah, blacking her
fabric of our
before. Yeah,
country.
she blacking her
Millions
before.
of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof, despite their
Yeah.
fraudulent statements that they made. Crime in this country is through the roof.
Well, if you don't
and we have
report
a
on
new
it,
form
then
of crime. It's
it
called
doesn't
migrant
exist,
crime,
right?
and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris, I'll
FBI
give you the-
they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst
Oh, why should there be like, oh, he was rude to the moderator.
cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000
Two
jobs
presidents,
that they
one
said
cup.
they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this
Two
is so
presidents,
rich.
one cup.
Coming
That's
from
nasty,
someone who has
man.
been
That's
prosecuted
nasty. Is there any
for
combination where you
national
would
security
watch out of
crimes,
curiosity?
economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where
Yeah,
each
you're trying
person
to lock him up for
stands
bullshit.
on the
You're trying to
issue
kill him
of
for
what is
bullshit.
important about respect
Yeah.
for the rule of law.
You guys don't like him
and
to the
respect
point
for
where you
law
wanna
enforcement.
eliminate him.
The former vice
Kinda makes me
president
wonder-
called for defunding
They did that with JFK.
federal law enforcement, 45,000
Wonder why
agents.
they're afraid of this
Get
guy.
This, on the day after
Better
he was
what you
arraigned
say.
on 34
got my
felony
vote.
counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what
Okay.
we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Well,
Excuse
right
me.
now, lately, the playbook's
Every
been
one of
Biden.
those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department.
I don't know if it
Every
never
one of those
happened in this
cases
country.
was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then
Never trust a
they say,
politician.
oh,
that's
he was,
true.
He's a criminal.
Now, that's what you
They're
could
the ones
trust,
that
Chauncey.
made them
Chauncey
go
Fatsack
after me.
is
By the way,
definitely
Joe
not a politician.
Biden
He's
was
right on
found
the wall.
essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election.
President
They're
Trump.
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct
know how they're
if
gonna
he
word-
were to enter
word
the
this
White
up.
House again.
How they're gonna write it up for
Understand,
tomorrow
this
morning.
is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm
lies.
quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies.
You guys are doing it
Someone
right
who
now.
has openly expressed
You guys are doing it right
disdain
now.
for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
All they really have
Vice
is
President
gotta
Harris,
fear
thank you.
Trump,
Lindsay.
fear the
Vice
orange
President
man.
Harris,
He's bad.
in
He'll
your
be a
last run
dictator.
for president.
Weaponized, please.
We gotta
This is the
continue
one
here.
that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy
President
with a fake Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that
to get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to.
He's
Lindsay?
getting fired up,
Vice
though.
President Harris, in your last run for president, you said
All
you
right,
wanted
so
to
far,
ban fracking.
Trump is losing
now
his
you
cool.
don't. You wanted
Okay?
mandatory
Look,
government
man,
buyback programs
Trump
for assault
cannot
weapons.
go
Now
in
your
there
campaign
wailing on her.
says you don't.
She's going to play
You
the
supported
victim. She's play the
decriminalizing
woman
border
card, and
crossings.
that's going to
Now
work
you're
well
taking a
for
harder
female
line.
voters.
I know you say that
okay?
your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every
Now, some of you
one
guys
the-
might be like,
at least
"You
every
lost the
point
female
that you've
voters
made. But
anyway."
in particular, let's
Maybe.
talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020.
Got to try to get them.
I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and
We're
was
getting
able
close
to
to
buy our first
energy
home when I
independence with
was a
Trump.
teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having
that's a nice
friend
story you
when I
just
was in
told.
high school who was
Don't
sexually
believe any
assaulted
of it.
by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed.
How are you protecting
and what is
Medicare?
important is that there
How
is
are you
a president
protecting
who
Medicare
actually
when
brings
you have all these
values
people
and a
brought in
perspective
that are gonna be
that is
on it?
about lifting people up and not beating people
Yeah,
down.
you're gonna milk that
and
thing out.
name-calling. The
Beat it.
true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that.
All right, Trump does not need to
she's been
gloat about
against it
himself.
for 12 years. Defund the police. She's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up
And she
at
did do that,
least
yeah.
12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out.
Fund
Wait a
the
minute,
police
I'm talking now.
and-
If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Oh,
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them
This
out
is
of
true.
jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left
What kind of
liberal
bonkers
that would do
sense is
this.
that?
She wants to
What?
confiscate your guns,
They're not even
and she
supposed to
will
be here.
never
Who's
allow
paying for that?
fracking
I'm
in
paying for that.
Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end
I'm
on day
paying for
one.
Juan
Just to
and
finish one
Manuel's
thing,
sex
so important in
change
my
operation.
opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. They took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just
Yeah, it does
56
seem like
days.
she's given more
And I
time.
want to talk about the peaceful
Or maybe it seems
transfer
like
of
whenever she
power,
talks,
which,
it
of
just
course, we
takes
all know is a
longer.
cornerstone of our democracy and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January
actually
6th,
concerned
you
why
told
my
your
son
supporters
hasn't
to march
asked
to the
me to
Capitol. You said you would
say
be right there with them.
prayer with them
The country and
before
the
bed.
world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack.
I do prayer time with
Aides
my
in the
son
West
every
Wing
night.
say you watched it unfold on television off
Not
the
a
Oval
joke.
Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact,
Yeah,
she said at the
he's
beginning,
deflecting.
oh, I'm
He asked
surprised you're
you.
not talking about the
Uncomfortable
border yet.
position.
That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America, they're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just-
when
Yeah,
are
he's
those-
filibustering. He's
David,
looking for
when
something.
are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be
Not
prosecuted?
going to happen.
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers.
All right,
They
that's a good thing to
rejected
bring
me.
up.
Nancy
They
Pelosi
requested
rejected
for
me. It
more
was just 2
charity.
weeks ago. Her
Was
daughter has
denied.
a tape of her saying she is fully responsible. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
Look, man, they're going to be like, oh, Trump couldn't admit any blame whatsoever.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th.
Oh, my God. Oh, my
I
God.
was
Tears.
the vice
Were you
president-elect. I was
barricaded?
also an acting senator. I was there. And on that
I
day,
was in the broom
the
closet.
President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital.
Baked Alaska was there
desecrate
on
our
Nancy
nation's
Pelosi's
capital.
phone.
On that day, 140 law enforcement officers
That's so crazy.
were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob
guys
of
on
people
both
carrying
sides.
tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back
The
and
Proud
stand
Boys.
by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was,
At one point, I think I had a
I
Proud Boy
say
like
we
recruiter
don't
in my
have to
chat.
go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to
Is he
stand
listening to her?
for
Because
rule
I'm
of
not.
law, and to end the chaos, and to end
Like,
the
who trained the
approach that
camel
is
to
about
talk?
attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has
I'm
said
sorry,
in
could
this
someone
election there will
remove
be
the
a
goat off the
bloodbath
stage, please?
if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart
Don't
a
go back,
course
man. Don't
for
go back.
the future and not go
City of
backwards
Chaz.
to the
Chaz
past.
forever.
Let me just follow up here.
Sound the most about Israel.
It was a different
Ah,
term,
yeah,
and it was
that's
a term
gotta be
that
the-
related to energy
everyone's
because they have
favorite part.
destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Right. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus
on
this next
issue.
Way to
get a focus, turn
really
around a bit.
This into
but the
focus,
Israel
truth,
thing's coming.
in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost
free
the 2020
Palestine?
election, you repeatedly
I don't want to take that
falsely
for free.
claimed that you won. Many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
None of those other Muslim countries won it.
Must
be a reason.
I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically.
That.
You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
And
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they said we didn't have standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing.
Trump might get hit on talking with the moderator.
Technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics.
That's something I would say out loud.
Because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline.
I gotta say, Chauncey, you can't say that.
We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you.
That's how China built their wall.
You heard the
Great
president
Wall of
there
China
tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States.
What kind of liquor do you think she drinks? Because I am seeing her drunk
as
right
he
here.
did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair
It's
election.
not rum. I want to say
I'm
rum.
going to tell you that
It's not
I
tequila
have
either.
traveled the world
Tequila
as
makes
vice
you
president of the
party.
United States. And world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump.
Vodka?
I have talked with military
Gin?
leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you
You
then
think she's a
talk
gin?
in this
A
way
gin and tonic?
in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the
Hennessy.
temperament.
She likes Hennessy. That's what she
Or
drinks.
the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just
That's
say
right.
about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him.
What's
I
going
ended
on
the
with
Nord
North Korea?
Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her.
Okay.
But
Mr.
he
President.
got 14 million votes. They threw him out.
I'd
She
say
got
some
0
inside
votes.
baseball.
And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm okay
President,
with it
Mr.
because
President, your time is
I
up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the
A lot more.
Israel-Hamas war and
Israel,
the hostages
Israel,
who
here
are
we
still
go.
being held, Americans among them. Vice
ready
President
for
Harris
ball
in
washing on
December,
both
you
sides.
said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you
Who's
added,
gonna-
quote,
who's gonna
it
lick the
matters
taint
how,
more?
saying international humanitarian law must be
or Harris?
respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7,
Okay.
Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered
Your voters are gonna hate that you said
1,200
that.
Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert.
Tom
Women
Piker
were
is
horribly
raging right
raped.
now.
And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would.
You can hear them
And
screaming
how
genocide.
it does so matters.
What genocide?
Because it is
Genocide.
also true, far
Depression.
too many
Open air prison.
innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must
Yeah,
end.
but what about the years
It
of
must
oppression?
end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around
Yeah,
the
well, that
clock,
one
also
little event doesn't
understanding that we
justify-
must chart a course for a two-state solution.
Let's say some
And
stupid
in
stuff.
that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure
Equal
you
measure?
always, I will
Good luck on that. Hold on. Make sure I got that right.
equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly
The correct
deserve.
response should be, I don't
President
give
Trump,
a
how
fuck.
would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas
Tell them,
in order
figure
to
it
get
out.
the
Don't call
hostages
us.
out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel.
Well,
If
she
she's
just needs to be
president,
more honest
I
about it,
believe
and-
that Israel will
I mean,
not
she would get that
exist within
support.
2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at
Of
predictions,
Sloan
and I hope
Parker.
I'm wrong about that one. She
Right,
hates
Parker,
Israel.
Biker?
At the same
Biker?
time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation.
The way
and
he says
now
terror,
what they're doing
I like
is
more
they're
than
spreading that money
than
around.
Bush.
Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people.
It
He
really
knows
is.
that. He's trying to,
Okay,
again,
who's
divide
kneecap?
and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong
Who
on
could
national
suck that dick
security
more,
and
huh?
foreign policy.
Who could
It is
suck it
well
better?
known that he admires dictators, wants to be a
Dictators.
dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well
Dictators.
known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia
sounds
went
like
into
Kamala Harris
Ukraine,
is
it
reaching.
was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we
They told you
understand
that
we
because
have
they wanted
to have
to
a
suck your
president
dick.
who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of
I mean, the
upholding
military-industrial
and respecting
complex,
in highest
splitting
regard our military.
Vice
politicians
President
apart.
Harris, thank you.
Of course.
And she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And
I
think
saw
he
that.
meant
I
it,
saw that.
because what he's gotten away
That's
with
pretty
is
funny.
absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think
They
that
think
they're
we're a
weak
joke.
and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Commercial break. Commercial break. Okay. Hold on. I need to check with my son. I need to check with my son real fast.
The ABC News presidential debate.
We're doing prayer time. Okay? I might be a fallen sinner. I might have my issues. I do. But damn it, as long as my son believes, I will do prayer time with him so that maybe his soul will be saved. All right, I'll be right back. No Kamala jokes, okay? We're respectful. We're all about women over here, strong, powerful women. All right? Yeah, strong, powerful women, guys. I'll be right back. Okay. My son was still pooping. He's going number 2. It extended because I did not get a chance to bless him with the Jesus prayer. So now he's emptying out his bowels in the toilet. It's gross, disgusting. It's happening because I did not save him. So it's unfortunate. Hopefully I get to him and he lets me know he's out. But like, need to bless you with the power of Christ. Okay. Play the rest of this.
Will continue after Friday 20.
Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years
we're back.
into this conflict.
Back.
Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would
you really
you
do that?
And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want
Trump's
Ukraine
call Putin
to win this
stop
war?
This.
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look,
he's going to tell Ukraine to pound
we're in
sand.
for $250 billion
You're
or
corrupt.
more.
Now you're taking
because
over.
They don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the
his answer to the Ukraine situation: make NATO pay, and then it wouldn't have happened.
I know Zelensky very well, and I know
happened,
Putin very
so what
well.
do we do?
I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would
guess
you
get
respect
Europe to
him?
do their
Why?
part.
For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself,
But
David.
they want that.
We're playing
They want
with
World War III.
And we have a
They want us
president that we
in
don't
our
even know
boys
if
and
he's-
girls
Where is
to
our
die.
president? We don't even know
They want
if
us
he's a
in my
president.
son.
And just to clarify
They
here,
threw him out of a
I don't want that to
campaign
happen.
like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
your time is up. Just to
We
clarify
have a president that we don't even know
do you
is
believe
running
it's
this
in the
country.
US best interest
Who's running this
for
country right
Ukraine
now?
to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
Yeah. I mean, you practically
I
are.
believe the reason
What?
that Donald Trump says that this war
What's
would be
the
over
difference?
within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened
Give
here.
up what, Ukraine?
I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's...
I don't even know where Kyiv is, and I don't even give a fuck. Like, most Americans probably do not care at all about this.
agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor?
Oh, she's trying to frame it that way.
And what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now.
Quiet, please.
But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't have a talk. He would and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now.
That was good.
But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't have to talk about that.
Can I get that?
Nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that.
Got to talk to world leaders to get shit accomplished.
About.
Yeah,
nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they
sent
her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin.
You sent her in to negotiate?
And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met
supposed to convince him not to do it. Why is he doing it?
Yeah.
You're supposed to do a blowjob of peace, not a blowjob of war. What are you doing?
And again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times.
Oh, really?
The reality is it has been about standing as America always should.
Are you standing or are you on your back?
Upholding international rules and norms. As a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strong men instead of caring about
She definitely knows her way around it.
And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president
who
understands
the
significance
the White House.
of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. Otherwise, we don't play. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President,
I don't know
do you
anything
believe
about him.
you bear any responsibility
But he looks like
in the way that withdrawal played
a villain.
Out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down.
How did it go down?
He bypassed
Kamala?
the Afghan government.
Okay.
He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban.
Yeah.
The negotiation
Abraham
involved the
Accords.
Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this. And the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the
like
importance
negotiate
of American
something? Oh, we don't
diplomacy,
negotiate
where we
terrorists.
invite
Okay.
and receive
Are they kind of run the show there?
respected world leaders. And this
You let them know. You don't
Former
want us to kill your
as
people, right?
president,
Or you
invited
kill all your
them
people.
to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers,
Oh,
and the
Trump
work
has
that
something
we must
smug
do
to
to
say.
uphold
He's
the
waiting for it.
strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months,
That's gangster.
we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason
That's how you
it
do
was
it.
good, it was we were getting out. We
You
would have
just
been out
whip your
faster
dick
than
out,
them,
put it
but
on the
we wouldn't have
table.
lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left.
Well, why do you have a picture of my house?
$85 billion worth of brand
Yeah,
new, beautiful
that's a picture
military
of
equipment behind.
you
And
and
just
your
to
goat.
finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you.
Damn.
I want to
That's
move on
all
now
Trump
to
needs to
recent
do.
politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice
Reinforce
President
the
Harris,
current
quote, I didn't know she
situation
was black
sucks.
until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her.
Yeah, that's the
up to
position
her.
to have. Be like,
Vice
hey,
President
I don't
Harris,
care.
Your thoughts on this?
Be whatever you want to be.
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career,
You don't even look black.
attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He
Like that
was
voice she has, that's a stripper
a-
voice
a-
right there.
land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated
Like a very
because he refused to
Experienced
rent
stripper.
property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5, took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this. Want someone
actually,
who
I think
understands,
the
as
American
I
people
do,
want
I
better than
travel our
now.
country.
Better than whatever this
We
is.
see in each
current.
other a friend.
I don't
we
care
see
what this
in
guy
each other
said.
a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have
I think that's
discourse
partially true.
about how we're going to invest in the
do meet with
aspirations
people
and the
all the
ambitions
time.
and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up,
I
Lindsay.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump.
I don't know.
And
Are
what
you
I
not
do
Joe Biden?
offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we
Enjoy.
can do instead
Don't
of
say joy.
always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans. And
So by small
and
businesses,
let's
she means
compare
like
the
OnlyFans
plans.
girls?
I have a plan to give startup businesses
small businesses, I'm thinking
$50,000 tax
streetwalkers.
deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work.
Drug
I
dealers,
have a plan,
streetwalkers,
$6,000
Venezuelan
for young
gangs.
families for the
Those
first
are
year
the
of your
upstarts she
child's
believes
life,
in.
to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris.
forward.
I was
Thank you. Let's
expecting
turn to
someone to
policy.
rage, but that
we
did not
have
happen.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
what
Well,
her
whatever she said,
plan is.
got a
until just
response.
recently.
I
Sure.
think
Lindsay, go ahead.
President
No,
Trump, the
President
former
Trump-
president has said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry.
I
We're
just
gonna
need to
move on,
respond.
Vice
One-
dude, they're both They're both railroading over the moderators. Okay.
To what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Correct. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them.
The problem with Trump, he gets off topic.
I had a choice to make.
Do
I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not-too-distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017,
All right,
you supported
you got this.
Bernie Sanders'
What can you
proposal
do, Harris?
to do away
This
with
one you can
private
probably
insurance
win.
and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I
mean, the
need to
premiums
respond
are
to
just
a
going to
previous
go
point
up.
that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking.
'Cause no matter
and
what
then
they
this
do,
business
really.
about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time.
He said he was trying
when
to.
I will
He said
never
he was going to try to
forget
replace
the
it.
early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate, and the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could
That's
deny
weird, because that still happens.
if
though.
a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we, over the last 4 years, have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed, for the first time, Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it,
Vice
pass this
President
prologue
Harris,
in
thank
terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
It'd be a
I wanna move
system
to
that you
an
pay
issue
into.
That's important for a
She
lot
made a
of
mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare.
The
much
problem with the
less
system
money.
you pay into is I don't want to pay for someone else's like diabetes and things like that.
Private
That's the
medical
problem.
insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump-
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the
It was interesting. Doing the CPS stuff, sometimes I'll encounter people, foreigners at a U.S. hospital. Were they at the U.S. hospital? Well, they did not want to be on a waiting list, and that is true. They have the ability to pay for the operation then and there and go do it, and it's so if you have the means to do that, can afford it, and I mean it works for you.
environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said the climate change is a
suck dick
hoax.
for the
And
trees.
what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can
Right.
actually
Lost my
deal
fence
with
in the
this
hurricane,
issue. The young
guys.
people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over
Lost
the
my
last
fence.
4 years, we have invested $1 trillion
Trump helped
in
me
a
get my
clean
fence
energy
back.
economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also
COVID.
proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris,
Opening
thank
up
you.
where?
It didn't
Mexico
happen.
and having Mexico make your cars? Is that what's
to
going on?
Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases
Mexico.
owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million?
I don't know why
This
Trump.
is a
It's not like
crooked
you're going on a tangent here.
administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements
What?
from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News president.
I got to be honest. At the end of whatever Trump said, I forgot what the question was. Like what? Okay.
Debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
I gotta say, I was actually kind of expecting more blood, but if anything, yeah, I mean, Trump has been more calm. He's been calmer. Yeah, there's been attempts from Harris to try to get under Trump's skin. There was a couple times where it was effective, or Trump did respond. There was one time he came so close It came so close to talk while she was talking. But she was the one who did that. It was Trump who had the excuse me moment, or I'm talking moment. That was nice. Quiet, please. I'm talking. That was great. That was actually my favorite part of this whole thing. Quiet, please. I'm talking. That has to be a clip. That's been clipped out. That's been clipped out already. That's like a meme or something. Wife talks to me like, quiet, please. I'm talking right now. That was so good because the way he did that, like, she couldn't shut him down because it was his turn. It was his time. Yeah. Pretty cool. And she wanted to say something. She was like, oh, that's cute. That's a cute play. There's moments when Kamala's talking where you can tell when she's like going over something that's rehearsed, and also when she's going off script. It's like the look in her eyes. She does this thing where she like looks at him, tries to buy time, and then she finds a groove. My son's still not asked for prayer time. That's not good. I don't make sure he's watching a Bible study. At the Bible study night. What am I talking about? Got Bible study at the Dead Man household. Other strengths and weaknesses here in this debate. There was a part where Kamala did try to get Trump in a corner on the January 6th stuff, and it was working a little bit, but he deflected real fast. Kind of shifted towards the border and all the people killed because of that, but okay. Anyway, let's
begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward.
What?
But we're not going back.
I did not hear that.
And I do believe that the American people
That's what I heard.
we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward.
I heard a man shoot me down, Kamala.
A vision of that
That's what I heard.
includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the
what
dreams,
I watched here is
the
how you
hopes,
will handle
the ambition of the
when a
American people,
world
which
leader
is
shuts you
why
down.
I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living.
Okay.
I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the
See,
world
I think
and ensuring
Trump
that we
showed
have the
strength.
respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental
America
rights
doesn't
and
need
freedoms,
a
including the right
whore.
of a woman to make decisions
Needs a-
about her own body and not have her government
dad.
tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat?
No, but
The
if they
only thing
smoke
I ever
marijuana,
asked
you
them,
lock them up.
Are you okay? And that's the kind of president
you
we
were a
need
prosecutor,
right now.
huh?
Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughing. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me.
See, and I believe
We're
this part.
laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia.
All right, guys, that was our debate. That was the debate here. So what do we think, guys? Huh? Is it Trump or Harris? Who is it? Huh? You got to ride with one or the other. Huh? Are you doing blowjobs for America? I guess that would Kamala. Kamala would be blowjobs for America. Trump would be no more wars. Trump. Make China pay. Imagine Trump getting on the phone, get a phone call going with Putin, and all he has to do is talk to him. Like, what? But like, you do have to talk to people to form understandings. Man, Trump. Oh man. Voting Kamala, course. I mean, yeah, that's what you're supposed to say in chat. I mean, that's what you got to say. Everyone got reported. Hi, guys. I'm Fed here. You've all been reported. Your IP addresses, too. Nice knowing you guys. I'll see you on the other side. I mean, on the other side of the fence. Like, there's going to be a gulag. You're in the gulag. I'm on the outside. And I'm waving. Like, you could have been here. Sean's over here. We're like waving at you. We're like, bye. Bye. Imagine it sucks, man. Susan's gone. Oh, that's right. That's right. Susan's gone. It's some Indian dude, right? Who runs YouTube. YouTube is run by some Pakistani dude. I think it's some ordinary gamer. Is that him? Doesn't know what toilet paper is, but can run YouTube. Okay. Kamala's brother. Thank you. Come again. All right, guys, this was fun. a fun little stream. All right, man. Well, dang. I actually was surprised that Trump remained that calm. I thought it was going to break, but no, he didn't. I predicted the headlines would be like, poor Kamala had to endure a bunch of lies, and there could be like Trump berated the moderator. But no, they both did. There was a time there was a part where both Trump and Kamala were getting off course and trying to run over the steamroll the moderator. All right, I got a bug in my boot or something. All right, guys. The queer show with Mr. Deadman's over. All right. I still stream on this channel every once in a while. This was something worthy. Something worth doing. All right, anyway, with that said, you guys take it easy and have a good one. Next stream, we'll, I don't know what we'll do. And we'll just fire it up and see what happens. That's what it used to be about. No preparation.